Deep inside the crystalline heart of a melting glacier in the Italian Alps, a team of glaciologists and paleobiologists in early 2026 stumbled upon something that shouldn't exist. For decades, we have been finding things frozen in time. Ancient spears, woolly mammoth remains, even preserved hunters from the Bronze Age. But what they pulled from the ice this time wasn't just a relic of the past. It was a biologically active, firing brain cell. A neuron that has been suspended in a state of perfect preservation for 5,000 years, and the moment it was introduced to a nutrient-rich solution in a high-tech lab in Zurich, something impossible happened. It pulsed. It reached out. It showed signs of life. This discovery is sending shockwaves through the scientific community because it challenges everything we thought we knew about the limits of biology and the nature of time itself. We have always been told that once a brain cell stops receiving oxygen, it's over within minutes. The delicate structures inside a neuron are supposed to break down and dissolve, but this cell, plucked from a 5-millennium-long slumber, seems to have discovered a biological loophole. It's like finding a light bulb that has been buried in the dirt for centuries, and when you plug it in, it glows brighter than a brand new one. This is the story of the 2026 Glacier find, a discovery that might hold the key to human longevity, the secrets of ancient intelligence, and a future where the passage of time is no longer a permanent barrier to the mind. To understand how high the stakes are here, you have to realize that this wasn't just a random piece of tissue. Using advanced 2026 imaging technology, the researchers identified that this specific neuron came from a region of the brain associated with memory and complex processing. It belonged to an individual who lived around 3000 BCE, a time when the Great Pyramids of Giza hadn't even been built yet. This person was walking the mountains, breathing air that was pure, and carrying a genetic blueprint that has remained tucked away in the deep freeze of a glacier for 50 centuries. The process of reviving this cell was like a high-stakes surgical operation performed on a microscopic level. When the ice core was first extracted, the team thought they were looking at a well-preserved fragment of a skull. But once they got it under the electron microscope, they saw the intricate, spindly branches of a neuron, the dendrites and the axon, perfectly intact. They weren't shattered by ice crystals, which is what usually happens when biological material freezes. Instead, it appeared that the cell had undergone a natural process of vitrification. It had turned into a kind of biological glass, preserving its internal machinery in a flawless state. When the scientists began the reanimation protocol, they were skeptical. They expected to see the cell disintegrate as it warmed up. But as they carefully replaced the ancient fluids with a synthetic cerebrospinal fluid enriched with modern growth factors, the unthinkable occurred. The cell's mitochondria, the power plants of the cell, began to produce energy. Electrical potentials began to build up across the cell membrane. It was a 5,000-year-old spark igniting in a modern laboratory. Imagine the information that could be stored in the physical structure of that cell. We often think of the brain as a computer, and if that's the case, we just found a working hard drive from the dawn of human history. Why does this matter to you and me? Because if a human brain cell can survive for 5,000 years and remain functional, then the expiration date we've placed on our own bodies might be completely wrong. We have been taught that aging and the loss of neural function are inevitable, a slow slide toward the end. But this discovery suggests that under the right conditions, the most complex parts of ourselves are incredibly resilient. It opens up the possibility of suspended animation that actually works. If we can figure out how the chemistry of this glacier preserved this cell without damage, we could theoretically put the human brain into a deep sleep for decades or even centuries, allowing us to travel to distant stars or wait for a time when medicine can fix currently untreatable conditions. The mystery of this specific cell goes even deeper. When the researchers monitored the electrical activity of the revived neuron, they noticed patterns that didn't match modern human cells. It was firing with a strange, rhythmic intensity. Some researchers are whispering about the possibility of ancestral memory, the idea that some level of information or experience might be physically encoded in the structure of the neuron itself. Could we eventually read what this cell saw 5,000 years ago? Could we tap into the sensory experiences of a person who lived before the invention of the wheel? It sounds like science fiction, but in 2026, the line between fiction and reality is getting thinner every day. We also have to talk about the location. The glacier where this was found is receding at an unprecedented rate, revealing secrets that have been hidden for longer than recorded history. The Swiss and Italian joint research team had to work in extreme conditions, racing against the summer melt to secure the site. They found that the brain cell was part of a larger find, a perfectly preserved partial cranium that had been shielded by a unique pocket of methane ice. This methane seems to have acted as a super insulator, preventing the jagged ice crystals from piercing the delicate cellular walls. It was a 1 in a billion alignment of geological circumstances. But with such a massive discovery comes an equally massive amount of controversy. Not everyone is happy that this cell has been revived. There are intense ethical debates happening in the halls of the World Science Council. If a cell is alive and firing, does it still belong to the person it came from? Are we violating the peace of an ancient human by poking and prodding their thoughts? Some critics argue that we are playing with a biological fire we don't understand. If we can wake up an ancient cell, what else might be waking up in the melting glaciers? There are fears of ancient bacteria or pathogens that our modern immune systems have never encountered, but the scientists in Zurich are focused on the potential. They see a future where neural restoration is a reality, where we can take the lessons learned from this 5,000-year-old survivor and apply them to treating modern neurological challenges. One of the most fascinating aspects of this 2026 find is the quality of the cell. We often assume that ancient people were somehow biologically simpler or less developed than us. But this neuron is robust. In fact, it shows a density of connections that is actually higher than what we see in many modern samples. It speaks to a life lived with high levels of environmental awareness and sensory input. This person wasn't just surviving. They were navigating a complex, dangerous world with a brain that was every bit as capable as ours, maybe even more so in certain ways. As the lab tests continue, the team has started a process called synaptic mapping. They are trying to see if this single cell can form connections with modern neurons in a lab dish. If a 5,000-year-old cell can talk to a 2026 cell, it proves that the universal language of the human brain has remained unchanged for millennia. It means that the bridge across time isn't just a metaphor. It's a physical reality made of proteins and electrical impulses. Imagine the first time those two cells connect. The first handshake between the ancient past and the high-tech present. The media has been surprisingly quiet about this, and some think there's a reason for the lack of footage. When you deal with something this revolutionary, the implications for the insurance industry, the medical field, and even our understanding of the human spirit are too big to handle all at once. There are rumors that the initial video of the cell pulsing was so unsettlingly alive that it was kept back to prevent public panic. People aren't ready to hear that the barrier between our world and the world of 5,000 years ago is starting to dissolve. Let's look at the chemistry for a moment. The 2026 analysis revealed a high concentration of a specific type of cryoprotectant protein in the cell. This is a substance that prevents water from turning into jagged ice. While some animals, like wood frogs, have this naturally, humans aren't supposed to. Did this ancient person have a genetic mutation that allowed their cells to survive the cold? Or was it something they ate, a forgotten medicinal plant from the prehistoric Alps that had the accidental side effect of preserving their biology for eternity? Tracking down the source of this protein could lead to a revolution in organ transplantation, allowing us to store hearts and lungs for years instead of hours. The 2026 Glacier find also changes the way we look at human history. We usually rely on pottery shards and stone tools to understand the past. But now we have the actual machinery of human thought. We can look at the DNA inside the cell, but more importantly, we can look at the epigenetic markers, the switches that show how this person's environment affected their genes. We can see the stress of a cold winter, the nutrients of a summer feast, and perhaps even the chemical signatures of the emotions they felt in their final moments. It's the ultimate biological time capsule. As the glacier continues to release its grip, researchers are bracing for what else might emerge. If a single brain cell can survive, what about an entire organ? What about a whole person? There are whispers of Anomaly 47, a larger mass found deeper in the ice that is currently being transported under heavy security to a specialized facility. People are speculating that the brain cell was just the beginning, a scout for a much larger discovery that could redefine the human story. Think about the sheer resilience of life. This cell was sitting in total darkness, in sub-zero temperatures, while empires rose and fell. It was there when the first cities were built in Mesopotamia. It was there during the Renaissance, the Industrial Revolution, and the World Wars. It was waiting, in a state of perfect patience, until a group of humans in 2026 had the technology to pick it up and say, "Hello, It's a reminder that we are part of a long, unbroken chain of life that is far tougher than we give it credit for. What happens next is going to be the biggest scientific story of our lifetimes. The Zurich team is planning to attempt a quantum scan of the cell's internal structure. They want to see if they can simulate the cell's activity in a computer model, to hear the electrical echoes of its past. If they can recreate the firing patterns, they might be able to decode the last thing this cell processed. Was it the sight of a mountain peak? The sound of a companion's voice? The feeling of the falling snow? We are on the verge of eavesdropping on the thoughts of a human from 5,000 years ago. The 2026 find is a testament to the fact that we live on a planet that still has secrets. Even as we look to the stars and plan missions to Mars, the ice beneath our feet is giving up treasures that are arguably more valuable. This 5,000-year-old brain cell isn't just a piece of tissue, it's a mirror. It shows us where we came from, and hints at a future where we might finally conquer the limitations of our own biology. Imagine a world where the wisdom of the past isn't just written in books, but is maintained in a living state. We are looking at the possibility of a library of life, where cells from throughout history are preserved and studied. It would allow us to see how the human brain has changed or hasn't changed over the course of civilization. We could see how modern pollutants and the digital age are affecting our neurons compared to the pristine environment of the ancient world. The data would be priceless. But beyond the science and the data, there is a profound sense of wonder here. When you look at the images of that neuron under the microscope, glowing with the dye used to highlight its activity, you are looking at the essence of what it means to be human. You are looking at the hardware of the soul. And the fact that it's still working, after all this time, is enough to make even the most cynical scientist stop and think. We are not just a collection of fragile parts. We are a masterpiece of biological engineering that can survive the weight of mountains and the passage of millennia. The 2026 discovery will undoubtedly inspire a new generation of scientists to look at the cold regions of our world not as desolate wastes, but as vast archives of life. From the permafrost of Siberia to the glaciers of the Andes, there is a biological vault waiting to be opened. This brain cell is the key that just turned the lock. As we move forward into this new era of paleobiology, we have to be prepared for the answers we find. They might not always be comfortable. They might challenge our religious views, our social structures, and our sense of self, but they will always be fascinating. As the team in Switzerland prepares their final report for the end of the year, the world waits with bated breath. The footage they have released so far, the brief, flickering light of a firing 5,000-year-old neuron, is already the most watched scientific clip in history. It transcends language and culture because it speaks to a fundamental human desire, to know that we matter and that we can survive. The 5,000-year-old brain cell is a tiny, microscopic beacon of hope. It tells us that nothing is ever truly lost. Even in the deepest, coldest ice, the spark of life can endure. And in 2026, we finally found the way to bring that spark back to the surface. The implications for medicine, for history, and for our own understanding of our potential are limitless. We are no longer just people of the present. We are now, more than ever, connected to everyone who has ever lived. The cell pulses, the dendrites reaching out through the centuries, and for the first time in 5,000 years, the ancient world is thinking again. This discovery also forces us to rethink our definition of existence. If a cell can be paused for 50 centuries and then resumed, what does that say about the continuity of experience? If we could eventually preserve a whole person, would they feel like they had just blinked? To the ancient person who lost this cell, only seconds might have passed in their perception between the cold of the glacier and the warmth of the modern lab. They would be a traveler from a world of flint and fur, stepping directly into a world of silicon and satellites. The 2026 Glacier find is not just a triumph of technology, it's a triumph of persistence. It's the result of humans refusing to accept that the past is unreachable. We are building the tools to reclaim our history, one cell at a time. And as the lab lights stay on late into the night in Zurich and the ancient neuron continues to fire in its nutrient bath, we are all reminded that the most incredible discoveries aren't always found in distant galaxies. Sometimes they are found right here, hidden in the ice, waiting for us to be ready to see them. The story of the 5,000-year-old living brain cell is just the beginning. It's a call to adventure for every curious mind on the planet. It's a reminder that the world is still full of magic, hidden behind the labels of science. As we watch this story unfold, we are watching the birth of a new kind of immortality. one that doesn't rely on myths, but on the cold, hard reality of a perfectly preserved cell. The future is here, and it's 5,000 years old. We also have to consider the biological resilience of the structures involved. The cell membrane, the tiny gates that control the flow of ions. These are incredibly delicate. How they didn't degrade over 5,000 years is a question that is currently baffling the world's leading biochemists. They are looking into glassy state logistics, where the molecules are crowded together so tightly that they simply cannot move or react with anything else. It's as if the cell was frozen not just in temperature, but in time itself. This molecular crowding could be the secret to creating new types of long-term storage for everything from medicines to biological data. As we look toward the next steps in 2027 and beyond, there are plans to create a dedicated international facility for the study of glaciated biology. This isn't just about cells. It's about understanding the entire ecosystem of the ancient world. What kind of proteins were they producing? What was their immune system like? By studying this 5,000-year-old cell, we are essentially getting a masterclass in human biology from a time before modern problems existed. We are learning how we were designed to function in our natural state. The 2026 find is a bridge. It connects the world of the hunter-gatherer to the world of the smartphone. It reminds us that despite all our technology and our cities, we are at our core the same biological entities that roamed the Alps 5 millennia ago. Our fears, our joys, our capacity for thought, it's all there, contained in a single pulsing cell from a glacier. And as we continue to unlock the secrets of this cell, we are really just unlocking the secrets of ourselves. The global scientific community is now looking at every glacier on Earth with new eyes. We are in a gold rush for biological information. But it's a race against time. As the planet warms, these archives are disappearing. Every drop of meltwater could be carrying away a secret like this brain cell. The 2026 discovery has given our efforts a new sense of urgency. We have to save these stories before they are gone forever. The image of that ancient cell, glowing in a modern lab, is something that will stay with us for a long time. It's a beautiful, haunting reminder of our place in the timeline of the Earth. We are not just temporary visitors. We are part of a deep, enduring legacy. The 5,000-year-old brain cell is still thinking, and in doing so, it's making us all think about what else is possible. The ice is melting, the secrets are coming out, and the world will never be the same again. We are waking up to a past that is much more alive than we ever dreamed. And as the 2026 mission concludes its initial phase, we can only wonder what the next glacier will reveal. The conversation between the past and the present has finally begun, and it's the most incredible thing we've ever heard. Keep watching the ice, because the history of humanity is still being written and some of the best chapters are just now thawing out.